So secondly, let's go into the support for immediate judgment, Lazarus and the rich man story. Luke 16, 19 through 31. I'm not going to go through it. We don't have time, but y'all know the story. There's a rich man and then there's a servant, and they both die, and they're both put into this place. And the rich man is in a place of torment, and Lazarus is in Abraham's bosom. And there's a great chasm in between them. And the rich man is begging Yeshua for water. And he says, look, I've got 5 other brothers, and they need to know about this place and how bad it is. If you raise me from the dead and let me go back and talk to them about it, they'll believe in you. And Yeshua says, look, they have Moses and the prophets. If they don't believe them, they're not going to believe a guy that raised from the dead. Now, I don't know about you. If somebody raised from the dead, I might believe, as some they say. But at the end of the day, what was happening is Yeshua was looking into his heart and saying, the hearts of your brothers are so hard, and the hearts of the people are so hard, they've got the gospel in front of them. I'm written all through there. If they read it and understood it, they would know that I am the Christ. But what we want to focus on here is, well, what is going on? Because is what Yeshua giving a real life example of what happens after death? This would be instantaneously against the rest of the scriptures that absolutely do not teach that you are judged after death. So what's going on here? Out of all the parables that Yeshua gives, why does this one seem so realistic? In a way it is. But remember, by the way, this is a very popular, he wasn't making this up. This was a popular parable that was told in the first century. Okay? And I'll go over that in just a second. So Lazarus and the rich man, first of all, parables are used to illustrate a principle for spiritual edification. They're not meant to teach theology. They're meant for principles. When I tell my kids Bible stories, I will elaborate on those Bible stories. Krispy Kreme donuts has made it into Bible stories at the Staley house. Okay. That does not mean that Yeshua had Krispy Kreme donuts. Okay? It means that there is something that I'm adding to the story for spiritual edification. Don't ask me what Krispy Kreme donuts have anything to do with spiritual edification. It doesn't. But I'll stretch and add things to the story so that I can make it make sense to them on their level. That's what Yeshua does with us adults. Yeshua's point was that having wealth and status does not prove you have God's favor. That's the entire point of that parable. Yeshua was warning these religious leaders to listen to Moses and the prophets and repent of their hard hearts toward the poor and the needy. Not only that, scholars acknowledge that this was a familiar story in Yeshua's time. Here's a quote from Edmund Flood on this very subject. Once again, Jesus takes something from his audience's experience. This time it's a popular story. As writers and other artists have always done, he fashions existing material to his own purposes. Jesus in this story didn't want to speak about the afterlife. He wasn't telling his audience what would happen in the future when they have died. That was just the backdrop to what he wanted to say. If you will, the furniture of the stage was being set. So he was taking something that was very familiar to them, and he was trying to teach a principle that if you look down on the poor and you treat them with disdain and you don't follow Moses and the prophets, you're going to end up in the reverse of what you think. You think you're going to be in Abraham's bosom. And by the way, there's a reason why they said that, because everybody was bragging about being Abraham's kin and being connected to Abraham. Our father Abraham had many sons, right? So you wanted to be a son of Abraham. And what he was saying is, no. It's actually the beggar that ends up in Abraham's bosom, not you. That's the point of the story. So what do we learn from the story? First of all, Abraham's bosom is not heaven, clearly. Are we to believe that this is a real place and not an analogy? Think about this. One drop of water would be sufficient enough for a man burning in fire. And secondly, that if he's really being tortured by fire, he can even talk. I don't know about you, but most people that are being burned at the stake, which is happening even today on a different side of the world, they can't do anything but scream. But we are led to believe by some Bible teachers that the story of Lazarus is a real story of something that's really happening. It's not happening that way. It's not real. It's meant to tell a spiritual principle. First of all, and the proof of that is the word for hell here is Hades, not Gehenna. Why is that critical? Because Hades, in the Greek is the equivalent of Sheol in the Hebrew. Gehenna is actually the fiery hell. Two different Greek words. If it was the fiery hell that the rich man went to, the author would have used Gehenna. He didn't use Gehenna because he knows, because he reads his Bible, that people go to a place called Sheol. Gehenna is the fiery hell, and actually was a trash pit outside of Jerusalem where they burned their trash, and the fire was burning all the time. It's in the Gehenna Valley, right outside the city.